It's easy, quote unquote, to take the city. But how to maintain the control of the city, not to mention the peace building and the rebuilding of the city and of your country, are the biggest questions facing all of us today. What is your take?
I certainly agree with what you said. There is a huge preparation, number one, for taking the city, and we're prepared for a long fight, and we have prepared the logistical support for the next 6 to 9 months. We are fully prepared now. Also, although we believe that we will retake the city on this side of Christmas, hopefully, but we are prepared for all sort of ends, if you like. The humanitarian aid is the biggest challenge, because we don't know where is this 1.5 million people are going to fled north, south, east, west, and to have to prepare to receive 1.5 million people in these 4 directions. This is number one. Number two is we don't want them, because there are some strong signs and indicators that Daesh or ISIS are going to use them as a human shield, and they're going to get in the crossfire, and we don't want that at all. We want them either to flee the city or to stay indoors. And there are good signs now that there are people from within Mosul are rebelling against ISIS, and that will make life much easier for the Iraqi army, Popular Mobilization Forces, federal police, as well as the Peshmerga from Kurdistan region.
Ambassador Volker, I have to put the same question to you. You know the complexity of the battleground, of course, but even more than that, that is the sustainability of peace in the city. May I ask you a question one by one, and may I have some quick answer from you? Deconstruct the answer of earlier Dr. Rubaie, what he said. First of all, 5 to 6 months, President Obama already left the White House at that moment. So will the next White House having the similar policy that will make sure to continue the battle?
Yes, I do not think that whether it is Hillary Clinton, which is most likely, or even if it's Donald Trump, you'll see an abrupt change to this operation. No president is going to try to tear up an ongoing military support like this.
Secondly, what about the longer term planning? Retake city, but at the same time make sure there's peace. There's also the locals that are guarding the peace. How is that likely to happen?
This is really a great question. It is not clear at all at this point exactly how this will play out. You have the Iraqi government forces that want to retake Mosul and then govern Mosul. You have the Peshmerga forces that are very effective on the ground, and the Kurds have also had a claim to Mosul and will have some interest in the way it is governed. You have Shia militias, which are very unwelcome in Mosul, and yet they've been critical to the Iraqi government effort. You have local Sunni tribes that are very skeptical of the Iraqi government and of the Kurds. And I don't know that any of this has been put together in a way forward for the governance of Mosul.
All right, number 3, 1.5 million people. Those are the civilians, of course, in the city of Mosul, fleeing the battleground. What's going to happen to them? Who are going to take them?
Yeah, we really don't know. The safest surrounding territory is in the Kurdish region. And so it is quite possible many of them would flee to the Kurdish region. However, being a majority Sunni Arab population, they may not feel comfortable in the long run being there, and they may try to flee to some of the Sunni areas where the tribal leadership lives, or because the Iraqi army is going to be the liberating force, it may just be because of the conflict zones itself, the easiest path to go where the Iraqi army has come from. So as your previous speaker said, it's very unclear where they're going to go.
Last but certainly not least for this round, a quick question and answer, Ambassador Volker. What about make sure they are not going to be used as human shields by the terrorists?
they will be used as human shields by the terrorists. It can't be prevented. They control the city right now. They will threaten to kill them if they move. They will kill some of them on their own anyway. It's just going to be a very difficult part of the operation to preserve as much life as possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Li. You've been attentively listened to your two other colleagues when they are discussing the issues on the ground and in the longer term. From your perspective, looking at from China, of course, the Iraq war was at the very beginning very controversial, and many have already believed, including President Obama, about the necessity at the very beginning to even conduct this war. But the thing is, what to do next? Is so-called retake of Mosul from the ISIL likely to put one more piece of peace in that country?
I think at this moment, as I said, at the very beginning, there could be some very controversial about whether American or the British will right to to conduct this war. But it is a common knowledge now in the West, that was huge mistakes made by the former president and the former prime minister. As a few the future about the Mosul in general and the Iraq in general, I think as the previous two speakers has admitted that definitely I think the Mosul will be taken by the Iraqi army. The major questions or the major challenges the Iraqi or the governments face is how to rebuild, how to retake the reconciliation process, because we know that this area is rich not only in oil resources, but also I think is rich in ethnic or religious factions.
To say the least.
Yeah, that is, there are several, the political functions has already claimed the rights to, to hold this area. How, to rebuild this area. It is a big challenges, I think, facing the Iraqi government.
Before we go to some of the detail you have just said, Mr. Li, let me go back to Dr. Rubaie to ask you some specific questions. At this moment, it is still the battleground that we are talking about. President Obama from the United States, since he came into the office, his idea was supposed to put the local forces in the front line, and while the Americans being of support. But has that worked, and will that work in this specific case of retake of Mosul? It's a big question. Dr. Rubaie, what do you make of it?
Well, the what I call the reckless withdrawal of the Americans at the end of 2011 is one of the reasons why ISIS has prevailed in the north and western part of the country. But I think what happened to us in the last 2.5 years, we have managed to rehabilitate, reconstruct more than 50% of the Iraqi army. There is a new concept which your other guest called Shia militia, is what I call the popular mobilization forces, and they are under the leadership of the commander-in-chief, and they are part and parcel of the Iraqi security forces now. They are marching also. We have managed to liberate more than 80% of the territory the ISIS has managed to occupy in June 2014. Now I think this is the last stronghold of ISIS, and this is and Iraq will prevail definitely at the end, and whether on this side of the Christmas or on the early next year.
What you say, sir, in the end, of course, it gives us a hope, but at the same time, it gives us a question mark as to how much of an extension of time this will be. So may I ask you even more specifically at this moment about the Americans' role toward this retake of Mosul? You've got 200 to 300 special American forces via radio guiding the Iraqi forces. You also have intelligence, Apache pilots, and some of the other who are doing support to the Iraqi troops. How significant are they, Dr. Rubaie, from Iraqi's perspective, are these American forces and their so-called support? What would that mean for the success eventually? Can you, Iraqi forces, work on your own?
Coalition forces presence in Iraq now is pivotal and very important for the previous operations and for this operation. The air support is very important. Intelligence sharing is extremely important. Training, logistical support, provision of arms, and all sort of planning. These are important parts of the operation, and we need them. But who is going to carry the fight on the ground? Who has been carrying the fight on the ground and liberating more than 80% of the territory occupied in 2014 is the Iraqis, the Iraqi army, the Iraqi Federal Police, the Popular Mobilization Forces, and the Peshmerga as well.
Well, Ambassador Volker, despite what Dr. Rubaie just said, half of the 5,000 almost American forces on the ground will participate directly into retake the city of Mosul in one way or the other. At the very beginning, remember, Ambassador Volker, the reason why President Obama and the American people chose the way that it is, which is to have the Iraqis and the locals on the front line, is because the Americans don't want to sacrifice directly the lives of the American troops. That's going to be very controversial inside your country. So with almost half of the troops involved anyway directly, can the purpose be served? Ambassador Volker.
Yes, and I would say, first off, I agree with a great deal of what Dr. Rubaie said. I think he laid it out very well. Second, even with 2,500 troops, the U.S. could not do this as the United States. We're only able to play a role in supporting the Iraqi authorities. Third, the withdrawal was only partly to avoid American casualties in Iraq. Another aspect of this that President Obama focused on was the massive presence of American forces being a cause of fighting against that presence. And so he wanted to dramatically reduce that footprint. All that being said, what you've asked through your questions is correct. The U.S. role in this battle and in supporting the Iraqi forces is now much more substantial than what President Obama has really acknowledged or presented to the American people. We've presented the withdrawal, but in reality, we are now there not only with airstrikes, but as you said, also with helicopters, with intelligence, with spotters, with special forces who are communicating, that are embedded and are communicating with each other, and indeed taking part in some of the fighting. It's a more substantial role, but it is still a support role.
Okay, certainly it is not just ISIL, not just Iraq, and not just the United States that are the key players on the ground. There are several other key players. That is really the complex picture that we're talking about, gentlemen. Right now, there are 30,000 pro-government forces consisting of the Iraqi army, Sunni tribal fighters, and Kurdish military with air support from the US-led coalition. Now let us understand the relations between those fighting against the ISIL. Among them, see this complicated relation. U.S. is pro-Iraqi government, of course. The Kurdish forces are also favored ally. Turkey, another country, always want to be involved, is training Sunni tribal fighters, not to mention the role of Iran and some of the others that are actually playing indirectly on the region. Sir Li, I have to leave this very complicated question to you. So many players. President Obama wants the Iraqis to call the shots, but so many other players want to really call the shots. What's going on?
I think this is something, it's very hard to predict at this moment. It mainly depends on how I think the battle itself are going on. If, suppose, the battle is ran quite smoothly as according to the strategy, planned by the Iraqi government, as the Iraqi Prime Minister Abadi said that only the Iraqi forces, the army, the policemen, can has the rights to go inside the Mosul city and also manage the order of the city after when the battle was finished. If the battle did not run according to what they had planned, then I think the situation would be more complicated, because you need all these forces to go together inside the countries. And Turkey has already made it clear that they would have the right to decide what the Mosul would be afterwards.
Well, Ambassador Volker, the complexity of it is so many players, regional, international, also within the country, beyond the border. What does the United States make of this complex picture? If the US not necessarily going to be sustainably involved in this, what's likely to happen? But if you are, what kind of things is the US dragging itself into?
Yeah. My own view is that I think the U.S. needs to be deeply involved in this. We will be affected by the outcome dramatically, however things turn out. ISIS has certainly made the United States and our values, our freedom, democracy, a principal target of their attacks. The people in the region are going to have a difficult time overcoming their differences on their own, and I think the U.S. as well as others can play a role in helping to stabilize this. I think it is, we are kidding ourselves in the United States if we think we can have a minimal role and just target ISIS and not worry about the bigger picture.
But Ambassador Volker, there are debates inside your capital about this. Some say very small role, as small as possible. Others, as you say, we have to play so-called the necessary role. Is that likely to continue that debate, or one side is going to take the stronghold?
It's going to continue, and even in the scenario where Hillary Clinton becomes president and she talks about having a more robust policy, even within her own administration, you're going to have those very same debates. It's not a clear-cut position from one side or the other in Washington.
Dr. Rubaie, very important question for you as well. The ISIL could be driven away. Mosul could be taken at this moment with efforts. And yet the question is, how will that impact on the evolvement of ISIL rather? We have seen Al-Qaeda, for example, in Afghanistan has evolved as a result of anti-terrorist campaigns by different forces. So maybe not ISIL anymore next time it's called something else. It's the same, even more dangerous, some would say. From Iraqi's perspective, what do you make of the nature of this fight now?
I certainly agree with that. And before I pick up your question, I need to talk about the multiple player in the region.
Go ahead, sir.
We need to see some more pressure from the United States of America on the Turks to withdraw their troops from inside Iraq. We need to see some pressure from the American on their Gulf allies in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar to stop funding terrorists in Iraq and Syria. Now, taking your question and what is after that, what is after ISIS is extremely important. Number one, the government of Iraq is prepared to go really the extra mile and go for a real national reconciliation program. This is after reconstruction and normalization, and then putting a local government in place and local police in place and everything in place. We need to stop this ideological challenge. This is not only a security challenge. This is a new religion. This is called a new faith. This is an evil faith of exclusion and hatred. Now we need to call this and the ideological challenge, and the world is turning a blind eye to this ideological challenge, which is coming from the ideology or theocracy called Wahhabism. We need to address this, and we need to dry it out in their sources inside Saudi Arabia.
I see. Before we go to Mr. Li for the final words, let me come back to you, Ambassador Volker, very briefly to respond to your Iraqi counterpart, his demand that the U.S. role and U.S. talk to the regional players, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and some of the others. Can you?
Well, I would phrase it slightly differently. I understand where he's coming from, but I think we need Turkey and Saudi Arabia also to be part of a solution. And he sees them as taking territory supporting terrorists. They do have their own networks and connections inside the region as well. And we need everybody to be pulling towards a defeat of ISIS and a reestablishment of security and building a lasting political settlement.
All right, Mr. Li, final words from you as well. China, as member of P5 of the Security Council, of course, working hard on the Iraqi issue. But now when you see a battleground like this, and so many issues all entangled together, the future?
I think, first we are fully supported the Iraqi, decision to take, the Mosul. Then we also calling on, all, the players, as I say that, try to unite it. The first priority is to defeat the ISIL. Then, I think, to make the rebuild of the country. We hope, the Iraqi, very successful, and the best wishes is that, afterwards they can concentrate all the efforts to rebuild the countries.